Okay, I want to welcome everybody to the April 2025 meeting of the Parrot Club. And tonight we're very happy to have PhotoBert, also known as Bert Sirkin, with us tonight. Bert is a professional photographer, and he's going to offer tips about photographing our parrots and other animals. He's been a professional photographer and educator, excuse me, for over 40 years. And I've sent around links about his online workshops and his published photos. And he helps people understand their cameras and editing software in simple English. He teaches various photography topics, Lightroom, Photoshop, and as I learned tonight, he also teaches AI usage. So with that, I will turn it over to you, Bert.
Okay, thanks, Amy. And it's nice to see a lot of faces I haven't seen in a long time. Marianne and I haven't been to a meeting. Do you meet in person ever anymore?
Let me unmute there. Yes, we have our picnic and we have our holiday party, and then last year we had a third event with our 50th anniversary.
Oh, okay. But regular meetings are not.
No.
They're all Zoom now.
Yeah.
The pandemic did change a lot of things.
Mhm.
Okay. Let me share my screen and we will get going. Okay. So I've titled this Tips for Improving Your Parrot and Other Pictures. What I'm going to talk about tonight is photography in general. And photography with your smartphone really isn't a whole lot different than photography with any other camera. Your smartphones have lots and lots of features, probably many which you don't use and maybe some you'll never use. But there are some really useful ones, and we're going to talk about those. My contact information. Feel free to contact me if you like. If you have questions. Basically, I apprenticed with a professional photographer in Boston. Graduated Northeastern University. I've done part-time professional photography pretty much all my life. I've been training since college, training photography. And I taught programming at Capital Community Technical College for 20 years. I just keep teaching. I love teaching. So we're going to talk about common mistakes that you make, that we all make when we take pictures. We'll talk about how we correct those mistakes and get it right. I'll talk about macro, which is a really interesting aspect of smartphone photography. We'll talk about editing your images, and you guys were talking about this. It sounds like you may be doing some of that already. We'll talk about tips for better photos. We'll talk about storing your photos, making your photos permanent, and I'll show you some of my parrot and bird photos. I particularly like photographing birds. I photograph birds in the Everglades and Costa Rica and a number of other places. So, common mistakes. Mistakes we all make when we take pictures. The first one we'll talk about is where everything in the picture is blurry. And by the way, I have a single parrot. I know some of you have many. I have one parrot. She's 40, just turned 44. And she's a cross between a Panama and a blue front. When she was a baby, when we first got her, we first saw her at 3 months. She had a big blue patch, as blue fronts have. But at about 9 months to a year, she outgrew the patch, started looking more like a Panama. The second is where part of your image is out of focus, where maybe your subject is out of focus and maybe the background is in focus. Crooked pictures. I've always taken crooked pictures. We can correct that though. Using optical zoom versus digital zoom versus optical zoom. Your cameras, your smartphones have two kinds of zoom where you zoom in. One is called optical zoom, one is called digital zoom. Digital zoom is not very good. You always want to use optical zoom if you can. but you can't always. We'll talk more about that. Exposure issues, where your images come out either too dark or too light. We're going to show you how easy it is to correct this. Color issues, where your images just don't have the right color. Our smartphones or even professional cameras can't take the right color all the time. We sometimes have to intervene. Centered pictures, where your subject's head is dead center in the frame. This is something we don't want to do. I'm going to show you the options and how you do want to compose it. Where you don't have a clearly identifiable subject. You take a picture and, we were talking about vacation pictures, and somebody had to sit through watching, hundreds of pictures that somebody showed. Chances are many of those had an unidentifiable subject. You look at it and you go, why'd that person take the picture? Not a good idea. Cutting off your subject. It's much nicer when we see the whole subject, especially when they have a pretty tail. Not watching your backgrounds. Got a beautiful hydrangea bloom in the foreground, but look at all those other blooms in the background that kind of take our attention away. Our eyes start wandering. We don't want to do that if we can help it. We want our subject to be clearly identifiable and alone in the image. So how do we correct these things? Well, there are a number of ways. The first thing is understand that cameras, and when we talk about a camera, we're talking about smartphones or any kind of camera, have a lot of similarities to the human eye. We can actually draw diagrams and show how different parts of a camera have a relationship to the human eye. But even though they have similarities, they work very, very differently. The human eye and the camera are completely different. What we see is not what we get with a camera. Cameras have an inability to capture reality. Captures reality in terms of subjects, but in terms of the look of the image, images look very different than we see them with our eyes. So, why is this? Well, a lot of it has to do with our brain. Our brain interferes with what we see. It changes what we actually see. Cameras need a lot more light to see than our eyes. We can look at a scene that has deep shadow areas and bright light. For instance, the sunset. If you look at a sunset, the sky is very bright, but the foreground is dark. Our eyes can see detail in all of the scene and everything. Our cameras cannot. Our cameras cannot see the detail in the shadow and in the bright areas. So when you take a picture of a sunset, very often your camera will overexpose the color in the sky, and you get a flat image. The sky just is kind of bright. There's no real color in it. And you go, boy, I saw color. Why didn't I get the color? Well, you didn't get the color because your camera works very differently than your eyes. Cameras need to focus. Do you need to focus your eyes? When you look at a scene, everything is sharp. That's not the case when we take pictures with a camera. Our eyes continually adjust for lighting conditions, but we sometimes have to instruct our cameras to bring in more light or reduce the amount of light. Our cameras need instruction, and they try to do things automatically, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And what I was alluding to earlier is that our brain compensates. It compensates for colors. So we may see a color, but when we photograph it, the color's different. It's because our brain is interpreting what we see. We all see different things. This is a really hard concept for people to understand. When I look at a scene, I do not see the same thing you see, even though the same things are there. What we see is determined by our background, our history, what we've seen before. Our brain is interpreting. Literally, our eyes look, but our brains see. Oh, I was one ahead of myself. Sorry, I was on the color part. Let's go back to the earlier one. The brain only lets us see what we want to see. One of the big problems in photography is we take a picture and our eyes are only letting us see what we want to see. So we see a subject. We see a great subject. We don't look at the background. We don't look at what's around our subject. We don't look at the color of light. We don't look at a lot of things because our brain is just focusing on our subject. So if there's clutter all around our subject, we don't see it when we're taking the picture. We have to make a conscious effort to see that clutter because our brain doesn't want us to see it. It filters it out. Again, I mentioned this earlier, we can see detail in the brightest and darkest parts of a scene. Our cameras cannot do that. So when we take that sunset, we have a really bright sky, a really dark foreground. Our camera can't see the detail in both. So it tries to get something in between, and it doesn't get either one right. One of my biggest suggestions I can give you that I'm going to guess a lot of you have never done is to clean your smartphone lens. A dirty lens, and we all have a dirty lens right now, I will guarantee you that. We have either dust, lint, if you keep, depending on where you keep your phone. If you pick up your phone, you're probably putting your fingers on the lens, and you probably have finger grease on the lens. This affects your images. Clean your lens. It's really, really simple. A microfiber cloth is best, and if you've never used this product, I'm going to strongly recommend you try it. This is the absolute best. I've been using it since the 80s. I used to buy it from a guy who made it in his garage. Somebody from Eastern Europe had the formula, gave him the formula. He started making it in his garage in Chicago. I used to send him a check, and he used to mail me a bottle. And you can now get it in almost any optical store. It's now manufactured by some company out in California, I think. But this is the best thing for cleaning glasses, computer screens, smartphone lenses, camera lenses, any kind of lens is really good. It's called ROR. So the next big tip is get to know your phone or camera. And by get to know, I mean learn the features. Find out what it can do, what it's capable of. And I guarantee you it's capable of a lot more than you imagine. All of our smartphones have a wide range of features. So if we go back and look at this blurry picture, this blurry picture was caused by movement by me. I'm the photographer. I moved the camera. I didn't do it on purpose, but because there was dim light, and when you shoot in dim light, you're going to have a much higher propensity of getting blurred images like this. And the reason for that is because the camera selects a shutter speed. The shutter speed determines how long light is allowed to reach the sensor in the camera, the light sensitive sensor, to create the image. And the longer you allow light to come in, the more likely you're going to move the camera during that exposure period. And if you look at this, you can see that there was a shutter speed of 1/8 of a second. This 1/8 of a second, it's absolutely impossible for any human to hold a camera or a smartphone for 1/8 of a second and take a sharp picture. The reason is it was dark. There wasn't much light. So my camera selected a slow shutter speed. This is what happens when you have a slow shutter speed. Again, it happens when you're shooting in dim light. After you take a picture, you can, and this is, we're going to talk cell phone, what's the term? We're not talking about iPhones. We're not talking about Android. We're not talking about any other phones. We're talking all phones. They're all the same. So after taking a picture, you're going to touch that picture and you can select details or properties. There'll be a menu and you can choose either details, properties, or some word like that. And you'll get to see the shutter speed. So on my phone, I did this and you can see that I shot this at 1/8 of a second. Too slow to hand hold. That's why it's blurred. Basically, it was caused by camera shake. I shook the camera when I took it. And when I say shook it, I didn't hold it completely steady. And it's impossible for a human to hold a phone or a camera completely steady. So slow shutter speeds will cause more blurring. But blurred pictures can also be caused by a moving subject. So even if you're holding the camera steady, if the subject moves when you're taking that exposure, the longer the exposure is, the more likely it's going to be blurred. You can manually set the shutter speed on every smartphone to something like a 200th of a second. This will be more likely to you'll be more likely to get a sharp image when you do that. And you definitely want to do this if you know your subject is going to be moving. And what parrot doesn't move? You can also blur it. When we talk about camera shake, pressing the shutter button on your phone is a way most of us blur our pictures. On our phones, we usually have one or two different ways of taking a picture. We can usually touch the screen somewhere, sometimes anywhere, and sometimes there's a little round target that we touch to take the picture. When we do that, if we touch it hard, we're going to move the camera when we're taking the picture. That's going to blur your images. You just want to touch that, barely touch it. You don't have to touch it hard. You want to touch it so that you do not move the camera at all. Some cameras have other options. For instance, there may be a button you could press, and maybe you find that you press that button, usually on the side of the phone. Maybe you can press that without moving better than you can touch by touching. Depends. Every one of us is different. Take lots of pictures. If you like a subject, take a whole bunch of pictures of that subject and then get rid of the ones that didn't come out as good. You can look at what you have and decide what you want. A joke I used to tell about a professional photographer versus an amateur photographer is what differentiates an amateur from a professional. And I'd say an amateur may get one good picture out of 20. A professional might get 3 images out of 20. It's not that professionals don't take bad pictures. We just don't show them. Your smartphone has an option called burst mode. And burst mode will take multiple photos So you have a range of photos to choose from. So you can go into burst mode and it'll take a series of pictures. Sometimes you can configure how many pictures, sometimes you can't. And then you can decide which ones you like, which ones you don't like, and delete the ones you don't like. Burst mode is really good for a moving subject. So if you're taking a picture of a moving subject, take a burst of images. It may take 10 images in a row, and then you get to choose which one you like best. Okay. Learn to focus. Focusing is a really critical skill with a smartphone, and it's really easy to master. I'm going to show you how. You basically only want to focus on one thing. I mentioned earlier that cameras have to focus, our eyes don't. We see, assuming our eyes are corrected with glasses, or if we don't need glasses, we see everything in focus, but our camera doesn't. Our cameras have our lenses in our cameras give us something called depth of field. Depth of field is an indicator of what in an image will be sharp. And anything in front of or behind that, the area of depth of field, will be blurred. And our cameras do that. They blur things in front of and behind our subjects. So if we don't focus properly, we'll get a blurred image. Now, our phones will try to focus on the right subject, but they don't always know what our subject is. With most phones, you can point to the subject and tap the screen to focus. So you may get a box or a circle on your phone around where your finger pressed the screen. And if you hold your finger there, you'll actually lock the focus. So here's a video, and I have a little fence post and a hydrangea in the background. And I'm going to focus back and forth on each one. Sorry, it's a little shaky. And as I focus on each one, you can see the other one goes blurry. So it's really easy to focus on your subject just by touching the screen. You have to be careful because some cameras, some phones, you can set up so that touching anywhere on the screen will take a picture. You can disable that, and then you'll be able to focus. But this is a really easy skill to master. Usually you get a circle or a box, and on my phone, there's a little lock at the top. And if you hold your finger at that lock, you'll end up locking the focus. What that does is maintains the focus there. So even if you recompose your image with your phone, you move it, and that circle's not on your subject anymore, it'll still be focused on your subject because you locked it there. And that little lock will close, so it'll show that it's locked. Your camera has a grid that you can enable. You need to go into the menu system to enable it, but it helps you from shooting crooked images. And the grid usually looks like this, and I'll enhance it here in yellow to show you what it looks like. This is what it looks like normally, not enhanced. You can see that there's two vertical and two horizontal lines. And we're going to talk more about these lines and what they are, but they can be used to keep your images straight. So if you want to take images that aren't crooked, we can use a grid, and all smartphones have this grid. You can turn it on, and it's always on. The grid will not show up in your pictures, but it'll assist you when you're taking your pictures. Digital zoom. There's two ways you can zoom your smartphone. One way is called optical zoom, and the other is digital zoom. Digital zoom is not the best. Sometimes we don't have a choice. If we want to get a picture of something, we may have to do a digital zoom. But we have two options, the optical and the digital. Optical means it uses a lens to do the zooming. And this is a high quality way of doing it. Digital zoom does, well, I'll tell you what it does right here. Digital zoom, that's where you pinch your screen to zoom, stretches the pixels. Our images are made up of individual pixels, maybe 10 or 20 million of these little pixels. Well, when we use digital zoom, we pinch to zoom, and we pinch to bring something in closer. What we're doing is we're stretching those pixels. And when we stretch the pixels, we get a lower quality image. So you always want to use optical zoom if you can. As I said, sometimes the subject is far enough away and you want to get a picture, you need to use digital zoom. So we can see that the result between an optical zoom and a digital zoom, optical zoom will always give you a better, higher quality result. This is an image I took with my smartphone. It was using a 10 times optical zoom, and the quality is quite good. But if I had a phone and I didn't have 10 times optical zoom, I'd have to use a pinch to zoom. I'd end up getting a lower quality image. Wouldn't be anywhere near as sharp. So, a really basic tenet in photography. First of all, I'll tell you what photography means. Photography comes from Greek, from two words in Greek. The English words are photo and graphy. Photo means light. Graphy means drawing. So photography means drawing with light. So here's a picture I took from my bedroom window. It's a pretty lousy picture. I can't imagine a worse picture. Here's the same picture taken a few minutes later. Actually, it was a few minutes earlier, but it doesn't really matter. So the question is, what's the difference between these pictures? And the hint is it's not the shadow. What does photography mean? Drawing with light. The difference is light. When we take a picture, we're not taking a picture of our subjects, even though we think we are. We're taking pictures of the light that's falling on our subjects. There's nothing more important in photography, whether it be with our smartphone or a camera, than light. And the difference between these two pictures is light. So how do you keep from taking pictures that are either too bright or too dark? Well, in photography, we have something called exposure. Exposure talks about how much light reaches the camera's sensor. The camera's sensor is what is light sensitive. It's what records the image. So how much light reaches that sensor determines how bright or dark an image is. So here we see the same image, three parts of an image. Part of it's underexposed, part of it's overexposed, and part of it's correctly exposed. And obviously the underexposed and the overexposed don't look as good because the right amount of light wasn't allowed to reach the sensor, either too much or too little. If you have a subject that is backlit, as in this image, you're likely to get a result like this. That's just too dark. The camera didn't know what to expose for, so it tried to get the sun to look good, which meant underexposing, letting less light reach the sensor. But that made our subjects too dark. You can use flash or some other light to reduce the contrast to brighten our subject. Or you can have the subject face the light source. So we need to think about this when we're taking our pictures. Where is the light? What's the source of the light? What are the shadows on our subject look like? Sometimes bright light on our person doesn't look good because we have deep shadows. Your camera or smartphone has an adjustment called exposure compensation. Maybe the most important feature of your smartphone. And you can use this to correct these situations where your camera is taking something that's too bright or too dark. And basically, it's just a matter of sliding your finger on the screen. Every smartphone is going to be a little bit different, but basically, you can go into a menu. On my phone, this is what the menu looked like. And we have something here called EV. EV stands for exposure value. And we set it set to +1, and we see +1. That means we're going to let more light reach the sensor than the camera thinks should. So if our image were to come out too dark, we want more light to reach the sensor. So we increase the EV. Well, there's an easier way to do this. You don't have to do it based on these numbers. Just like we can lock focus, we also have this little guy here, at least on my phone, where we can slide our finger horizontally, right or left. If we slide our finger to the right, we'll make the image lighter. If we slide it to the left, we'll make it darker. So while you're looking at your phone and deciding what you're going to take a picture of, you can move your finger right and left and adjust how bright or how dark your image is. This is an amazing feature that will improve many, many of your pictures. Cameras do not always get the exposure correct. Sometimes they do, in which case you don't have to do anything. But if it looks too dark or too bright, there's an easy fix for that. Here's a picture, snow. Snow is a particularly hard thing to take pictures with because it reflects a lot of light back to the camera, and the camera sees more light than there really is. Cameras are designed to take pictures or to figure out the exposure based on middle gray. So if the subject isn't middle gray or a middle tone, if it's real bright or real dark, the camera is going to get it wrong. Smartphone will get it wrong. And you can see what exposure compensation does in this image. So, how does a camera compensate for low light? So if you're taking pictures in an area that's dimly lit, and if you're taking pictures of your Parrot, most likely it's dimly lit because I'm going to guess it's going to be indoors, and we typically don't have really bright lights in our houses. So cameras have three ways to compensate. They can do it with the shutter speed. We talked about this a little earlier. The camera opens a shutter and closes the shutter for a period of time to allow the light to reach the sensor. If the shutter speed is too slow, you're going to have a blurred image. The second way is aperture, and the aperture is on the lens, and it allows more or less light to pass through the lens. The aperture closes and lets less light in, or opens and lets more light in. Unfortunately, our smartphones have almost no ability to adjust the aperture. Larger cameras do have that ability, but smartphones do not. So that's not something we actually can do with our smartphones. However, ISO sensitivity is, and this is how sensitive the sensor, the sensor inside your phone or camera is to light. We can make it more sensitive. but there's a cost. You can increase the ISO sensitivity, but when you do that, you're reducing your image quality, especially in smartphones. I say especially in smartphones because this has to do with sensor size. And the sensor inside our smartphones is tiny. The sensor is really, really small. It has to be because our smartphones are really small. Larger cameras have larger sensors, and it's not as much of a problem. But with our smartphones, when we increase the ISO, the sensitivity of the sensor, we reduce the quality of our images. A typical numeric range for ISO sensitivity is anywhere from 50 to maybe 6400. 50 is maybe we'll call it a normal sensitivity. It's fine for outdoor sunlight, bright sunlight. But as we reduce the amount of light, we have to increase the sensitivity. And in doing that, we reduce the image quality. Think of it like a volume control on a radio. Basically, as you turn the volume up, the music gets louder. But at some point, it also starts getting distorted. And that's what happens with our images. As light decreases, your camera will automatically increase the sensitivity of the sensor, adding distortion. In photography, we call that noise. We'll get more noise. Here's an extreme example. I took this picture with my smartphone. This was shot with good light at ISO 80. This next image was shot at ISO 3200 with low light. And this is what my smartphone produced. And we can see how much of a difference light makes with our images. Here's an enlargement of the little logo there at the top of this little container. And you can see what kind of quality we've lost. Now, our cameras will automatically try to correct for this. They do something called noise reduction. And after noise reduction, this is what the image looked like, at least the enlarged part. It's better, but it's by no means good compared to the one at the top. So as we shoot in dim light, we really, really reduce the quality of our images. We really want as much light as possible. Light is everything in photography. So what do you need for a good picture? Well, the first thing you need is good light. So in this image, I had good light. I was able to take a good picture of Boozy, my parrot. As I said, the word photography comes from the Greek, drawing with light. The best subject in bad light will always look bad. But an average or even mediocre subject in great light can look great. Light makes the picture. Always. You don't take pictures of the subjects. You're taking pictures of the light that's falling on your subjects. So let's talk a little bit about light. As I said, light is the essence of photography. Light has qualities. You probably haven't thought much about the qualities of light, but we have intensity. How bright is the light? We have quality. Is it a soft light or a hard light? I'll talk more about that in a second. The color of the light. Light can be warm, cool, or neutral. There's a direction of light that creates shadows. We have shadows that create depth. We have two kinds of light. We have momentary light and continuous. Momentary is like flash, just an instant flash of light. Continuous is light that's continuous, like window light. If light is diffused, it produces a nice soft look. Soft light has a really nice look with minimal shadows. Window light will create a soft light if it's diffused, or any light diffused from a light source with a translucent material. So if you have a white thin curtain on your window and you have window light coming through, it's a nice soft light. If the light comes from a point source, for instance, a smartphone flash, a flashlight, direct sunlight, it has a harsher look with distinct shadows. So look at these two images. The image on the left has a nice soft light. Look at the shadows. Look at the gradation of light and dark on the egg. The image on the right has a point source light. It's a harsh light. We see very sharp shadows, very sharp gradation in the light on the egg. The type of light, whether it's soft or hard, makes a big difference. Soft light is a much better light for most subjects. Not all, but most. Light also has color. We can measure that color. It's measured using something called the Kelvin scale. So if we look at the color temperatures of different lights, we see it can range from 1,000 to 10,000. 1,000 is very warm. 10,000 is very cool, more blue. Different kinds of light sources have different color temperatures. Daylight, or 5,200 Kelvin, is considered normal light for any camera, including a smartphone. So if you're taking a picture with anything but 5,200 Kelvin, normal midday daylight, then the color is probably not going to be right. So if we take a look at this picture of Boozy, this light is too warm. It's yellow. Now, if you just look at this picture by itself, you might not recognize that the color of the light is wrong, but it is. Now, if we look at this with our eyes, we don't see that it's wrong when we take the picture, because our brain is interpreting. Our brain interprets color of light color to be what we think it should be. So we never see the wrong color of light. This image is too cool. The blues are too strong. It's not until we see this third image that we truly understand how different these other two images are. Because our eyes don't want to, sometimes just can't see it. Basically, we have to know what kind of light we have, and we have to adjust it using a control on our camera. That control is called white balance. I'm going to talk about it in a second. But if we were to take a look at a fluorescent light, a cool white fluorescent fixture, anywhere, doesn't matter where it is, this is what our eyes will see. But this is what our camera will see, our smartphone. Because that light is really that yellowy, kind of a greenish yellow color. But our eyes could never see that because our brain is interpreting it for us. But our smartphone will see it. The problem is our brains are working against us. Basically, our brains process what we see. Our brains only lets us see what we think we want to see. And this is really a detriment to most photographers. You can't see the color of light. So you need to identify the color of your light and adjust. The nice thing is, what you see on the back of your phone will be the real color of the light. So even though you can't see it in real life, you can look at your phone and see what color it's seeing, and then you can adjust it. So if we were to look at a strawberry with our eyes, we know that a strawberry is red. Our brain knows a strawberry is red. No matter what the light source on that strawberry, it always looks red to us. But if we have a blue light on it, the camera is going to see it this way. Our cameras, our smartphones, see it based on the color of the ambient light. Our eyes don't. But again, if you look at it on the back on your phone when you're taking the picture, you'll see what the camera is seeing, and you'll be able to adjust it. Basically, our cameras expect everything to be lit by midday sun. Any other light source will create unnatural colors. Your camera will try to correct for it, but sometimes you need to give it a helping hand. If there isn't something pure white in the image, your camera will never, ever get it right, because that's what it looks for. It looks for something pure white, and then it tries to make it white. But our cameras, our smartphones, aren't all that intelligent as much as we'd like to think. The white balance setting is how you can help. So in your menu on your phone, you have a white balance setting, and you can adjust it. And you adjust it by the color temperature, Kelvin. So right now mine is set at 3000 Kelvin, which is a warm tone. So if we have warm light on our subject, we may want to bring this down to 3000 to say that's the color temperature of the ambient light, and the camera will record the colors properly. The difference can be as dramatic as this. Sometimes it's less dramatic, in which case sometimes we have trouble seeing it. But in this case, when I took this picture, this scene looked like this to me. My eyes saw the image on the right, even though my camera took the image on the left. So let's talk about composition. Composition is how we arrange the elements of our image within the camera frame. The rules I'm going to tell you, we'll only have a couple of rules here, are based on our DNA. Humans have certain things that they like to see, and it's built into our DNA to see them, to like them or not like them. Every human is the same in this case, because our DNA is almost identical, at least in this case. We have a rule called the rule of thirds, and this is the most basic composition rule in photography. And the rule of thirds is where we have a grid where each rectangle is equal size. So we have two vertical and two horizontal lines. If this looks like the grid that I showed you earlier, it is. It's exactly the same thing. We have this grid that we can turn on in our phones that will give us this rule of thirds grid. That's why it's there. It's not there to keep your pictures straight. It's there to compose. Your subject should always be placed at the intersection of the dividing lines. So wherever those green dots are, that's where your subject should be. It should be either there or along one of the vertical lines or along one of the horizontal lines. So if you were to take a picture of a seascape, the ocean should be aligned along this line or this line, either one, but never in the middle. And most people will automatically put the horizon line right there. That's not where you want to do it. And the subject should always be looking into the picture. So if you're taking pictures of an animal or a human, they should always be looking into the image, not out of it. The subject should never be in the center of the image. Almost never. This is a rule that can be broken. And there are times when we want to do that. But if you do that, you want to do it intentionally with forethought. There may be a reason. So if we get back to this grid that you can turn on in your camera or smartphone, this is a rule of thirds grid. And some smartphones actually give you other ones. There's a couple of other grids that you can do, but this is the most common one. If you have a grid, then you definitely have this grid. Maybe you have a few others. So if we look at this image fails because the subject is centered. This image fails because the subject is looking out of the image. In this case, the subject is looking into the image and it's aligned along one of the rule of thirds lines. This is the way you want to take this picture. So if we look at the three of them, the image on the right is the most pleasing. And why? Because it's in our DNA to like it like this. I can't tell you why. I don't know why. We were just designed this way. Clutter is an interesting thing because our brain doesn't allow us to see clutter all the time. But we can look for minimalistic images. In this case, we have a bullfrog on a pond, and the way I shot it was to get pretty much nothing in the image but the bullfrog. When you shoot a minimalistic image, it's easy for your subject to identify the subject. The eye doesn't have to wander around the image. It just goes right to your subject. You need to train your eye to look for clutter because your brain is trying to filter out clutter. We need to train our eye when we're taking a picture to look at everything around our subject, not just our subject, but everything around our subject. Ansel Adams said, a good photograph is knowing where to stand. And this is one of the most basic things that I like to teach. And that is where you stand makes all the difference in the world. If you move your feet, if you're about to take a picture and you move your feet 1 foot to the left or 1 foot to the right, or maybe 1 foot forward or 1 foot back, the image is going to change completely. We change the background, we change the perspective, we change a lot. Just standing in one place and taking a picture is a bad idea. When you take a picture, you should move around. Look at your subject in context with the background because the background matters. The foreground matters. So Ansel Adams was dead on. A good photograph is knowing where to stand. Albert Einstein said, out of clutter, find simplicity. Try to filter out that clutter. There's clutter. Your brain is filtering out the clutter. You don't want your brain to do that. You can't stop it. So what you have to do is stop and look, think. Here's an image that somebody shot on a workshop I was teaching. And it's an interesting subject, this old boxcar in the middle of the desert. But it's a terrible image because there's clutter. When the person took this, they didn't see the clutter. They didn't see the old house back here. They didn't see this trash over here or this building over here. They didn't see all of this stuff, this telephone pole. They didn't see all that stuff that was cluttering the image. A completely different perspective on the same subject by moving the feet, knowing where to stand, makes a completely different image, changes the image dramatically. Your background makes a big difference. Your background can clutter an image, or it can add context, depth, by blurring your background. And we do that with aperture. This was not taken with a smartphone. This was taken with a larger camera, and I was able to use my aperture to blur the background. Though most smartphones today have options to do this. It's usually in a menu. You usually do it after you take the picture. Sometimes there's a shooting mode you can choose to blur the picture. Sometimes a lot of phones have a portrait mode that will blur the background. And they don't blur it using optics. They blur the background using software, computers. It's called computational photography. It's where photography is headed. We're using software to adjust our images. Plain backgrounds can be some of the best backgrounds in the world because, like with the bullfrog, it's minimalistic. It reduces distractions. So when we have a really, really plain background, we create a more pleasing, simple image. So macro photography is photography when we take pictures of really, really small things, or we take pictures of things really close up. It's about capturing detail. Our smartphones are incredibly good at shooting macro images. Maybe one of the best things our phones do is shooting macro. That means getting very close to your subject. So this is a macro picture I took with my smartphone. I'm going to show you some more, and I'm going to show you how I did them. And it's really, really easy. When we shoot macro, we get to see intricate details. We see details of things we never see in everyday items. Most smartphones have an automatic macro mode, or they have a macro shooting mode that you can select. Some of the newer smartphones do it automatically. As you get closer to your subject, they go into macro mode automatically. Other ones, you have to tell it you want to go into macro mode, and that's usually an icon of a tulip. The tulip is the universal macro mode icon. So when I took this picture, here's how I took it. I have a little bracket. I'm going to show you where you can get a bracket like this. They're really easy to, they're very inexpensive. But when you shoot macro, you have to have something to stabilize your smartphone. Because if you don't stabilize it, you can't hold your phone steady enough to take the picture. Because the closer you get, the steadier you have to hold your phone. And literally, humans do not have the capability of holding a phone steady to take a macro shot. You can shoot handheld, but a tripod is a much better way to do this. You can buy this little tripod that has a phone holder on it. It's $15 on Amazon. There's many other kinds like this. I'll show you one I use, and I can't find it anymore. I don't know where I bought it. I got it years ago, but I couldn't find that specific one being sold anymore. But this is one I found on Amazon for $15. It even comes with a little remote control. And the remote control is good because you don't have to touch your phone because you might shake it when you take the picture, even with a tripod. So here's a picture I took of Boozie's eye. And this was actually handheld. I had good light. She was actually sitting looking out a window, and there was window light coming in. So it's a nice soft light. And you can see the detail. You can even see her little eyelashes up here. It was interesting. I once took Boozie many years ago to Dr. Giddings. I don't know if anybody remembers Dr. Giddings. And he looked at Boozie and he said, "Oh, that bird was imported." And Boozie wasn't. Boozie was bred here in Connecticut. We actually saw her when she was 3 months old from the breeder. But he said she was imported because her eyelashes, she didn't have any eyelashes, or not enough, I guess. And he said that birds, when they go through quarantine, tend to lose their eyelashes. I always remember that. I'm not sure why he said that, but she wasn't imported. She was actually bred here. In any event, this is a handheld macro, which actually came out pretty good. But I have to tell you, I took 4 or 5 or 6 or 10, I don't know how many, before I got a good one, because most of them were blurred. It's very hard to get a handheld macro. Here's some other macro shots I've shot. The one of the lily, this one here was shot on a tripod. The other 2 were handheld. This is a macro shot I took. It's part of a $20 bill. And you can see the detail you can capture with macro. And this is a really, really simple picture I took. It was really easy to take. I'll show you how I did it. I set up my phone on a little tripod. This is a tripod I can't seem to find anywhere, anybody selling. It's a really old one. I've probably had it for 5 years or more. But I basically use this little mini tripod to support my phone, aim the lenses straight down. And then I had to bring the bill up. So I put it on top of a vitamin bottle. I had to find the right vitamin bottle with the right height. And I put it on there, and you can kind of see this is the whole setup right here of me taking a picture of this bill. And the whole idea of the vitamin bottle was to move the bill higher up so I could get it closer to my phone. And I basically took a picture of the bill, and you can see the detail, the sharpness that you can get with macro images. And it's really, really easy. And with the tripod, you don't have to worry about short exposures. So even if you don't have a lot of light, you can usually get a pretty decent picture, as long as the phone doesn't bring the ISO too high. But you can always light it with a flashlight or anything else. Here's another picture I took of a penny. An old penny, and you can see all the little detail. You can even see how some of the lettering isn't even straight. TY here is kind of crooked, kind of lower. Interesting stuff you see that you don't normally see. This is a feather from Boozy. Give you an idea of size. We can take some really, really good macro images. And feathers are a great subject. Earlier, before we started, we were talking a little bit about editing, cropping, and maybe adjusting the brightness of an image after you've taken it. You can do that in editing. And basically, if your picture didn't come out exactly the way you wanted, you can try editing. And very often, cropping is a good idea. The cropping is removing parts of the image from the top, right, left, or bottom, where you can bring the image a little bit closer, even if you didn't take it closer. All smartphones come with at least one tool, usually there's several, to edit images. And you can download other apps. There's lots of apps out there that will help you edit images. Basic adjustments like brightness, contrast, highlights, shadows, and color. Highlights, you can try to get more detail in the highlights. You can try and get more detail in the shadows. You can change the color to a certain degree, not as much as when you take the picture, but you can adjust the color afterwards. Same thing with brightness, contrast. You can crop or straighten an image in editing. You can use, most cameras, most phones have filters and different effects that you can apply to change the look or mood of an image. Some phones allow you to smooth the skin, whiten teeth, adjust facial features. There are phones now that will actually change a person's expression. So if you take a picture of three people and one of the people wasn't smiling, it'll put a smile on their face. They use AI to do this. Matter of fact, almost all phones today, newer phones, use AI to adjust and modify images. You can do selective editing, where you adjust specific areas of a photo, sometimes called masking. You can remove a background or an object. Lots of phones have AI built into them now that will allow you to remove a person or an object from an image or change the background. You can use text overlays where you can add text to an image. You can combine images into a collage. All kinds of options, artistic effects, filters, and you can add a vintage look or a grunge look to an image. There's all kinds of things you can do to an image, and we can share. We need to talk about the kind of files that your camera produces, your smartphone produces. 99.9% of you use what's called a JPEG file. So what's a JPEG file? Well, your smartphone or your camera, digital camera, doesn't shoot JPEG files. It shoots something called a RAW file. A RAW file is just data, and it's not even an image. It needs to be converted to an image. So your smartphone or your camera does this conversion for you. It converts the RAW file into a JPEG, which is an image. Your smartphone does this, or you can do it. And most smartphones allow you to access that RAW file, but you have to tell it you want it. If you do that, the RAW file actually looks pretty lousy until you edit it. You have to edit it. But once you edit it, you can get a much better image than the camera produced JPEG. The editing means you're going to adjust the color, saturation, hue, sharpening, contrast, so forth. If the camera does the conversion and creates the JPEG image for you, which most of us do automatically without even thinking, you lose most of the raw data, and editing will only get you so far. You can shoot RAW. Samsung calls it Expert RAW. Apple calls it Pro RAW. All digital cameras take this RAW image, but not all give it to you. So your phone or camera has to supply it to you if you want it. You have to ask for it. You have to go to a menu and say, I want to get the RAW file. If you do that, it's going to take up a lot of space. RAW files are about 10 times larger than JPEG files. So you're going to use up a lot of space on your phone. Depends how much space you have. But very often you're going to get, if you have an image you really like, you may want to try shooting it RAW and then doing editing on the RAW image. It's not for everyone, that's for sure. But this is a picture I took in Boston. This is a JPEG image, which was basically came right out of my smartphone. And this is the RAW image that my smartphone took that I edited. And you can see the difference. I actually tell my smartphone to give me both the RAW and JPEG image, so I get both. I get to decide if I like the JPEG, and if I like the JPEG, I ignore the RAW or delete it. If I don't like the JPEG, I edit the RAW file. So, some tips. Smartphones have built-in shooting modes. Some have a mode called a Pro mode that provides additional features. The Pro mode allows you to set all the settings yourself. If you feel comfortable doing that, you can always go into a Pro mode. But there are pre-programmed modes. for taking different specific kinds of pictures. For instance, portraits or food or macro or panorama or a night. You have all these different modes on your phone. Look at them. Figure out what they are. If you know all the modes your camera has, next time you go to take a picture of maybe a plate of food in a restaurant, you may want to go into food mode. Lighting, you want to use a soft, natural light. If you can, avoid harsh shadows. Use your exposure compensation. Slide your finger left or right to make your image lighter or darker. It's really simple. Edit your images to correct lighting issues. So if you've taken an image and it's too dark or too light, try editing it. It could help. Most smartphones have something called an HDR mode. This is a high dynamic range mode. This is the issue that I talked about earlier, where you take a picture of a sunset and the sky is really bright and the foreground is really dark and the camera doesn't get either one right. Well, high dynamic range will handle that. What it does is takes better pictures of high contrast scenes. It's great for sunrise and sunset shots. The darker parts of the image will be lightened and the brighter areas will be darkened. And it does this by taking 3 images at the same time. One lighter, one darker, and one the way it thinks it should be. And then it combines all 3 images into one resulting image where you get the best parts of each image. It's really easy to do. You don't want to use HDR mode on normal scenes because it'll make the image look flat and kind of not so great. Some smartphones automatically enable HDR mode, and on others you have to select it. Here's an example of a normal image in an HDR image. This was not shot with a smartphone. This was shot with a larger camera, but it'll give you an idea of what HDR does. The image on the left was one image I took, and you can see we have a really bright sun, and the foreground is the shadow is completely lost. But in the HDR, where 3 images were combined to create one image, we got the best of the underexposed, the overexposed, and the normally exposed image. So HDR is really good for high contrast scenes like this one. Some cameras have astronomy modes now, astrophotography modes. You need a tripod for this. I took these outside my house about 3 or 4 weeks ago. And the image on the left, I think they're both about 2-minute exposures. It actually exposed these for about 2 minutes. So you have to have a tripod. You put it on a tripod, you aim it at the sky, you take the picture and you walk away. And you wait 2 minutes and then it finishes. And I used a optical zoom, a 5 times optical zoom on this image here. And this is the belt of Orion, which is right there. And I was actually trying to get this area, but I really couldn't see it very well because there's a nebula in that area. And I was hoping my phone could capture the nebula. I think it would have actually. But in any event, I didn't get it. So you can take pictures of the night sky, which is pretty amazing with a smartphone today. Holding your camera really steady when you take the picture, very important point. That's probably the biggest issue I see with people with smartphones. They blur the pictures because they jerk the camera when they take the picture. Just barely touch that little shutter button. If you can, always brace yourself against an immovable object. I like to lean against trees, poles, anything I can to steady myself. If you can change the shutter speed, you may want to do that to avoid camera shake. If you can change the ISO speed, you may want to do that to avoid camera shake. and also lower quality images if it's selecting too high an ISO speed. You need, if that's the case, you need more light. If the subject is moving, you may need a faster shutter speed. When taking pictures of people or animals, the first rule is always capture the eye. The eye is life. It shows life. If you don't get the eye, well, you failed. You need to get the eye with people or animals, and it must be sharp. Use the rule of thirds to compose your images. Try varying your perspective. Move your feet. Shoot from above, below, from the side. Try different angles. Don't be afraid to edit. And as I said before the presentation, only show your best images. And the biggest tip I can give you is to read the manual. Figure out what your phone camera can do and understand it. Your phone has lots and lots of features. And remember, there are always two people in every image. The photographer and the viewer. When you're taking a picture, think about somebody looking at this image and what they will think about it. Try to visualize the final image and imagine what somebody might think about it. So let's talk about storing your images. It's not a matter of if you're going to lose all of your images, you will. I guarantee you, every last image you've ever taken will be lost. Eventually. It's just a matter of when. You need at least 2 backups of every digital image you have. Anything that's digital, whether it be a document or an image, you need to have it backed up in at least 2 places. And each backup needs to be in a different place. You can use cloud backups, but I can tell you cloud backups will go away. You will lose all of your cloud backups, guaranteed. I just got an email the other day from a major provider saying that they lost all of my, they turns out not to be images, but it was another type of document. They lost all of my documents. If I didn't have a backup, tough. You will lose all your cloud backups. You can back up on an external hard drive. I like external hard drives because they're not plugged in all the time. Internal hard drive, you can use those too. Use a backup service. On Android, you can use Google Photos. On iPhone, you can use the iCloud service. Organize your images. Put all your images in folders. Figure out the file system on your computer and on your phone, and give them names, meaningful names where you put your photos so you can find them quickly. Back up your images on a regular basis. Create a recurring reminder on your smartphone or computer to remind you to back up. You can make your photos permanent by printing them. How many pictures have you printed? Parents have passed down images, family albums to their children. That's never going to happen again because nobody's keeping albums anymore. Eventually, all these digital images will eventually disappear. They all will go away. Printed photos create tangible memories. You can also create home decor. You can print photos lots of places, Walgreens, CVS, Rite Aid, Staples. You can do it online. Lots of places do it online. You can create photo books. They're really easy. You can create wall art. And I'll show you some of my photos. These are basically bird photos. So we'll go through a couple of them. This is the first one I want to show you. This is Boozy when she was 6 months old. She looks more like a blue frontier, but this is what she looks like today. That blue patch is completely gone. That's her on a bad hair day. She likes playing on the bed. These are two parrots I photographed in Aruba. They were actually caged parrots, but they were preening themselves. We tend to preen our birds, don't we? This is a wild parrot. I shot this in Costa Rica. This is a lilac-fronted parrot shot in San Diego. There are lots of flocks of these lilac-crowned Amazons in San Diego. The scarlet macaw from Costa Rica in an almond tree. It was eating almonds, raw almonds. And here's one scarlet macaw wanting to get a neck rub from the other. The other wasn't having anything to do with it. The place we stayed in Costa Rica, in this tree, flock, I don't know, maybe 10 or 12 scarlet macaws would come every morning and come into this one tree. They'd squawk for a while, then they'd leave. Amy, that was taken at the Birdie Bash many years ago in Middletown. And as was this. And was this. And the interesting story about this picture isn't the bird, it's the man. Because when we first bought Boozy, we first saw her when she was 3 months old. And the breeder had two birds there. The other one was bought by somebody else, and we bought Boozy. Well, this fellow, he owns the other bird now, and he bought it from someone else, or it got handed down from someone else. But we've had Boozy for 44 years, and he had the brother. We say the brother. We're not sure who's the brother or sister, but we never had Boozy sexed. We think she's a female, and we don't want to be surprised otherwise. These are two green herons in the Everglades, two baby green herons. As I said, I used to teach workshops in the Everglades, so I spent a lot of time in the Everglades shooting birds, the cormorant. That's a male inhinga. Great blue. Great blue feeding a chick. A big chick. Cattle egret. One of my favorite looking birds. I love these guys. There's such a soft look to them. Snowy egret. A red-bellied woodpecker in the Everglades. Barred owl. Sleepy one. Osprey. And probably the least loved, but I really think they're beautiful birds, black vultures. I mean, who couldn't love a face like that? the baby great horned owl. Brown pelican. Another brown pelican. This is the only captive bird I have a picture of here. Flamingos used to be all over southern Florida. They're actually coming back. They're starting to come back now. They've seen a few. So it's kind of a nice sign, maybe. But the Everglades are going away. They're going to be disappearing soon. So lots of reasons for that. It's a purple gallinule, one of the prettiest birds in the Everglades. The roseate spoonbill is the other one I like. Earlier I showed a picture of one. This is an Arctic tern feeding a baby, and you see a little fish in the beak. This was in Iceland. And the sparrow is right outside my kitchen window. These weren't taken with smartphones. These were taken with a larger camera. And as good as smartphones are, and they really are good, they can't compare to a larger camera. It's just the nature of it. It's not going to happen, at least for a long time. Unfortunately, but the smartphone is always with me, so I'm always shooting with my smartphone too. Another one shot outside my kitchen window. I think it's a song sparrow. Or house finch. It's the house finch, I think. These hummingbirds were shot in Costa Rica. This is an orange, a red-footed or orange-footed honey creeper in Costa Rica. The fiery-billed aracari. That's a green honey creeper. I think it's the female honey creeper, I believe. I forget what this guy is called. These are all Costa Rica. Has anybody been to, I'm not going to remember the name of the place. It's in Litchfield. It's a duck preserve. If you haven't been there, you need to go. Something Conservancy. I can't remember exactly the name. But if you look up Conservancy.
Livingston Ripley.
Ripley, yes, Ripley Conservancy. If you haven't been there, you need to go. It's a spectacular place. They have ducks from all around the world. It's an amazing place. So these next few pictures were taken at Ripley. These are southern screamers, although I never heard them scream. There's an Amazonian kingfisher. blue-footed booby. And I'll end with a few pictures of Boozy. Every afternoon at 3 p.m., Boozy starts screaming. She knows it's nap time. She takes a nap on my chest every afternoon. She goes to sleep sitting on my hand, head on my chest, and we usually both sleep together. And that's her on 4th of July. That was her on Halloween. And there she is celebrating the new year.
Well, thank you, Bert. That was fabulous. So much information, and your pictures are great. I'm going to open up to questions, but I just want to make a few comments first that occurred to me as I was watching this. First of all, when I get a new phone, I think the first thing I always do is I go into the camera and literally press on every single button and look at every single setting to find out what there is and what it does. So I really encourage people to do that. Another thing that's interesting is, remember in the old days, we used to just buy a light bulb. Your light went out, you went, all you need to do is know the wattage. Now with the LED bulbs, you you can't just buy a bulb. You have to answer all these questions like what temperature do you want? What kind of light do you want? It's very much akin to the white balance in your camera. So all the things that when you're trying to decide on what kind of light bulb you want for your kitchen or your garage or whatever, those are the same sorts of questions you're answering when you're taking a picture with your camera. The thing is, you have to kind of, and I forget to do this too, but it's great if you think ahead of time to go to the white balance button and set that before you take the pose. It's a lot easier to do that than to change the coloration in post-production. So it's just, it's a question of habit and something to get used to. And we talked about Pro Mode. I know where Pro Mode is in my Android, and I use that actually quite a bit. Even if I don't change the settings, just by going into Pro Mode, I find a lot of times I get a better picture than the automatic picture. We had a question from someone with an iPhone here about where that is on the iPhones. And since I've only ever used Android, I don't know, but I know we have a lot of people in here that use iPhones, and probably some of you know where Pro is. So I'd appreciate if somebody with an iPhone could speak up and let us know how you get into the Pro mode where you can make these settings on an iPhone. And anyone who wants to talk, just unmute yourself, or if you only want to put it in chat, let me know. Nicole says she'd love a class from you on jewelry photography. Yeah, I would attend that too, because I have to take so many close-up photos for the auction. So I'm always trying to kind of optimize that sort of thing too. And I agree, by the way, Livingston Ripley is a fabulous place. Just one caution though, if you go to Livingston, right now they are still open. There are certain requirements because of avian flu. You can look it up, but they still are allowing tours. I've been there many times. We've had them actually come to talk to the club in the past. They actually brought some of their birds to our old clubhouse. But if you go to Livingston Ripley now, and I do highly recommend it, it's amazing what they have there though. Keep in mind there's the potential for avian flu. So when you come home, don't bring any of that clothing anywhere near your birds. Wear shoes that you can leave in your garage or outside, and throw your clothing in the wash before you interact with your birds. Because remember, it's all waterfowl there, and to me, that would just be a risky place to go. And Boozy is just so adorable, I have to say. And I remember when you took that photo, I was standing right next to you when you took it. I do remember.
By the way, on an iPhone, I asked AI for this. It says open the settings app, scroll down and tap camera, then formats, then turn on Pro RAW or Apple Pro RAW.
Well, that's for RAW, but if you just want the section where you can pick your white balance and your ISO and all that.
Well, it's the same thing. I think you have to go, well, let's see. Enable Pro Mode in the camera app. Open camera app at the top of the screen, tap the RAW button to enable Pro RAW. I guess you have to do RAW.
Oh,
Probably
there
not.
is no raw.
Well, I do know on my Android, if I go in Pro Mode, it also enables RAW.
Oh,
So-
see, mine doesn't. I've got photo and then,
Yeah,
but I also can go into settings and I have it default to JPEG, but I can do JPEG, RAW, or JPEG.
Macro control on. No.
But Pro Mode just opens up an options screen that gives me, I can turn autofocus off or on, white balance, ISO, and exposure.
Yeah, I have no promo or anything like it.
So I know like Nicole, you probably use Pro Mode occasionally, or Jenny? Do you know where those are on your cameras, on your iPhones?
I don't actually use Pro Mode. I didn't even know it existed until tonight. And I don't know where it is, so I'll have to look into that. I'm using my phone right now to watch the Zoom.
Jenny, because you do a lot of editing on your phones, do you know where Pro Mode is on your iPhone? Because I know you have an iPhone too. Or anybody else on here who has that. I mean, Candy,
Yeah,
you open up and just click on every single thing you see. You're gonna
they're all open. Everything is on. I have everything on that I can.
open up your actual camera though. So like on my Android, if I turn on
This
camera,
is the camera. I don't have an app for camera, but it's in settings. In settings is a camera. And this is all I have in camera. So this is settings. Go to settings and then you go to, I just had it up camera. And this is, you can't read it, but
yeah, but not even on settings. Like if we, see if I can
in the camera itself, when I go to camera, I don't really have anything much.
when I open up camera, I've got choice of slow motion, video, photo.
Yeah, that's it. Portrait, spatial, and pano.
is there a more option?
Yeah, like
No, mine does not have more.
Huh.
Not, I don't know.
Okay, you know what? I'm just gonna Google that.
That's what I think I'm gonna have to do is sit down with Miss Siri or something and if we can figure this out.
How to do Pro Mode. Oh, I see where you're doing with the yeah, change advanced camera settings. Yeah, change the camera resolution. Camera control. I mean, I'm sure it's got to be easy on there because it's very easy on Android phones. Or let's see.
Yeah, well,
I just Googled it and it's got to enable Pro RAW and resolution control on an iPhone, navigate to settings, camera, formats, and toggle on Pro RAW and resolution control.
format.
Then tap Pro Default to choose your preferred resolution and format, et cetera, et cetera. I just
Settings,
Googled
Yeah,
it.
it looks like it turns Pro RAW on.
Formats.
Yes.
So I'm not sure if you only can shoot RAW or you can shoot JPEG or what.
So you turn that on?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like when I looked it up, it sounded like you get RAW automatically with it. I don't.
No, I have to actually.
There must be a
RAW.
way. There must be a way just to turn on a Pro mode.
Yeah, I turned on Pro RAW and resolution control.
Oh, it looks like there's a manual. It's called manual mode with iPhones. It says it's a manual shooting mode.
It's probably called manual mode. That's really what it is.
Yes, if you go to manual mode, then you will see the different options for ISO and white balance, and you'll see it'll say WB.
All righty.
It may differ between different iPhone models. So put in whichever model you have. The Android phones are actually pretty standardized with that because they all use Google as a platform. So, but look for something instead of Pro. Look for something that says manual.
Well, what I'm reading here, it says the built-in camera app on iPhone does not offer true manual mode for all settings. You can adjust some parameters such as exposure by tapping the screen. You can lock focus and exposure. However, you cannot manually set ISO, shutter speed, or white balance in the default app. You can use a third-party app to do it, apparently.
That seems
Uh,
pretty good, friendly. I mean, I know. I mean, there are people who love iPhones and people love Androids. I'm an Android person. On Androids, you can customize things a lot more than on iPhones. And being a very hands-on computer person, I've always liked having more control. But on iPhones are known for their cameras, so I find it hard to believe everything would just be automatic and you couldn't make simple changes like that.
Well, iPhone has a lot of third-party apps, camera apps,
Yeah.
and so you could use one of those. Like I'm looking, Camera Plus 2 is one of those, and that one you can do manual. Final Cut Camera by Apple, so Apple sells one. You can use that.
That seems unfriendly.
Yeah, Apple sells more. I mean, you get a lot of free stuff on Android that Apple charges for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's Apple.
Yeah, well, it's like
Phone has a slightly different end on the cord. They change it so you I have a 15 Pro Max, and it wouldn't work with the cord for my 12 Pro Max. They make sure that you have to buy new stuff every time. They love making money.
Yeah. Yeah. But as Bert said, because the sensors are much smaller, you're not going to get the same quality, but your phone is with you all the time, and
Right.
so you'll get the shots that you wouldn't get because you don't have your larger camera. So it's just a lot more convenient. But you can do so much with these phones.
USB-C.
It's just amazing all the different modes they have.
Yeah, and I have multiple USB-Cs. This is my new iPad. It's a 2022, and I just bought it. And the 2020 that I have use different cords. Say two iPads, two different cords. And they're both C, but it's a slightly different C, so you can't interchange.
Oh God.
They're so greedy.
As because Europe is insisting on a universal standard now. Everybody has to use USB-C. So the first time ever, you should be able to take any USB-C now, and you can use it on Android or an iPhone or
Maybe going forward, yeah, because I have all different ones. It's ridiculous. It's just even for the last 5 years, I've got all different cords for all different things, and they don't fit each other. At any rate, that's Apple.
Can you imagine if every different appliance you bought for your house had a different power cord, and you needed different outlets for different types of power cords to plug in the wall? I mean, this is kind of what we're talking about. So,
yeah.
But yeah, explore your phone. For an iPhone, maybe you do need a separate app. But there are, and most of the time you're not going to use these things, but the white balance one is really useful, because that picture Bert showed of Boozy with that sort of dim orangey light, I mean, a lot of our photos end up looking like that. And it's kind of interesting. I was looking at the rope perch you had, and we all know what colors our rope perch actually looks like. And so if you adjust it so that the rope perch looks like the right color, then the rest of the bird and the rest of it looks like the right color. And so I was kind of focusing in on the way the rope perch looked, and the one photo where the color balance was perfect was the one that the rope perch looked perfect in.
Yeah.
I took some photos for our auction. I had some rope perches that I put up last year, and honest to God, I was looking at it and going, the photo will be perfect when the rope perch is the correct color, because I know what the rope perch is supposed to look like.
Well, the rope perch has a white, one of the threads is white. And that's typically, if you look at white, you usually can tell if it's the right color white. But even white, our eyes sometimes don't see, if you put multiple whites next to each other, you see a huge difference, but you look at
Right.
them individually and they all look the same.
Mhm.
I know. You know what, it was kind of interesting when you put the strawberry up because we've all had the experience. We're looking at something like, let's say, a purple flower or something. I tend to see this a lot with the colors like purples and reds. And then you take a picture of it and it's just not the same color. But when you're looking at it on the phone or even in a camera, I've had the same problem with cameras. It looks fine when you look in the lens, but then after the picture, it's a different color, and it drives me nuts that I'm not getting the color that I'm seeing when I look at it.
We thank our brains for that.
Yeah, I know, I know. Oh, thanks, Susan and Candy. A lot of comments about how great this is. I said this will be posted, but if anybody has any questions, please jump in. I love taking macro photos too, I have to say. That's one of my favorite things, is doing macros. I haven't done feathers though, like yours. I got to do that. Those feather photos are great, and the eyes, man. That picture of Boozy, you could see those little wrinkles around the skin around the eyes. It was just like amazing.
As I said, it took a number of pictures to get a good one. You know, it was a fair amount of light, but still macro is tough. You need even if you're steady, the bird may not be. And
Well, that's the problem. The moment your bird knows you're taking a picture of it,
yeah,
they move.
yeah.
Bird can be fast asleep. They haven't opened their eyes in an hour. And the moment your camera is up to them, suddenly they're awake. And it's just so hard to get them to sit still for pictures. In fact, there was a Twitter account I remember a while back. It was something I call like bad parrot photos, and everybody was posting all the photos they've taken of the birds where they're blurry or moving and not in focus, which is the majority of the photos. So, do you have any questions? Anybody who's still on here? I'm just scrolling back to see if there are any other questions. Oh, and as Bert said, please back it up. If you have an Android phone, usually Google Photos is automatically on by default, or at least it is with Verizon. I can say that. So usually people with Android phones, if they don't do anything, the photos are automatically backing up. Though if you have a lot of photos, you may hit the limit and may have to. I think I spend like $2 a month, and I have some absolutely enormous mass storage. But I've had known too many cases with people with iPhones where I've heard iCloud was not automatically turned on, and then they've lost their phone or it got damaged or stolen, broke or whatever, and all their photos are gone. I was like, well, they should all be in the cloud, but I keep hearing that iCloud was not automatically turning on for people. So yeah, you just have to make sure, absolutely sure that's on. You do not want to lose your photos if something happens to your phone, and it will happen to your phone. Your phone will die. You will get a new phone. It will get dropped or stolen or something. It's not, as Bert said, it's not a question of when. It's a question of if. It's a question of when. So you must make sure you got a backup on for that.
Yeah, I pay like $2.99 a month for 50 gig or something for
Yeah.
iPhone for my the backup in the iCloud for my pictures. I'm just hoping they're all there.
They should be. I mean, you can go look, but they should be. It's definitely, $3 a month to preserve your photos. I mean, that's nothing. That's nothing.
Yeah, so long as they're really there, that's great. And like you say, when I die, my kids are never even going to look at them. They don't want any of the antiques, any of the family relics, things that were passed down from great grandparents. Like, I don't want that.
No.
Everything is going to go in the dumpster anyway. It's just stuff.
Yes, my phone photos are all up to the cloud, but of course I've got many thousands of photos that weren't taken with my phone that were taken with the camera. But all the photos are also on my computer hard drives. I copy them over. I have 2 external hard drives as well, and everything but photos is also uploaded to a cloud. I still don't have another cloud service for the photos that are on my computer that are not on my phone. So that's one more thing, but I do have multiple copies of everything because, as Bert said, you know, it all disappears. At any given time, one or another source will disappear or die or whatever. So you have to, if they're important to you, you have to have multiple copies. It's just so important.
Mhm. We have, from moving, we have bins, the big plastic bins. We've got like 5 or 6 of them, all photos. And you know what my daughter's gonna do? She's gonna hurl the boxes unopened in a dumpster because there's really nothing there she's interested in. Or my son, you know, it's like stuff that I want to have and I have photos of, but nobody else is gonna want those photos. My photos from Costa Rica, I hold dear. That I mean, they're not anything like your photos. They're pretty rough, but I was just delighted to be able to take them and have them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're memories.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Our photos are memories that we can look at. You know, it's great to have them.
Yeah. Oh, and Bert, I have to ask you, so were all those images AI generated in the presentation?
Which ones?
Oh, like there was
No,
walking brain and the walking eyeball and things like that.
which ones?
There was a walking eyeball that was
Oh,
holding
yeah. Yeah.
walking brain. Those are all AI.
Well, the walking eyeball actually wasn't. Actually, I stole that from somewhere, but I use AI for a lot of image. I do a lot of different presentations, and I rely heavily on AI for cartoonish kind of things, like the first image of the on the table of contents. There was a parrot with glasses, and
Yeah.
that was AI, and one behind me is AI, and
Mm. And all the boozy ones with the holiday stuff, that was all AI, was it? With the,
well, it was me playing with Photoshop. I just created it.
oh, I got you. So I know she wasn't actually holding the flag, and I know she wasn't wearing a hat, although maybe she was. You know?
No, she wasn't. She would not be happy doing that.
No.
Right, right. All right. Well, if there aren't any other questions, I'm going to stop the recording.